I'm not your lieutenant. I'm not your helmsman. I'm not your crew. I'm Gordon Malloy, and this is my house. And I'm like, yes. Hi guys, Get64 here, and today we're talking about the Orville New Horizons, episode 6, titled Twice in a Lifetime. And this may be my favorite episode of the entire show. Obviously, I can't call it yet. I'll wait till the whole season's over. But this is my favorite episode of this season for sure, and a season that's been pretty solid. Now, this episode in particular is a sequel to the season 2 episode Lasting Impressions, in which a time capsule is found and Gordon ends up creating a simulated version of a woman based on information from a cell phone that was in that time capsule. And I actually thought that episode was like a good little episode. So this is basically I would say this is like just a direct sequel to that episode. And like I said, I think Twice in a Lifetime might be my favorite episode of the entire show. For those new here, the way that I do my review is I go through and break down the episode and talk about each individual plot point, really share my thoughts and get into it kind of as a discussion. And at the end, I kind of give a recap and review, as well as ask you guys what you think about some specific plot points as well. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the review. So the episode opens up with Gordon singing All I've Got to Say, which is the song that was sung in that season 2 episode, Lasting Impressions. And the actor, Scott Grimes, can actually sing. So it's cool that, he got this moment. I think Scott Grimes is one of the best actors on the show, and I feel like he's been really underutilized this season, so I'm glad he gets a spotlight here. And we already got that set up with him singing a song, hosting a party in his quarters. During this party, Isaac is trying to build a connection with Charlie Burke, and Lamar gives some advice on striking up conversation, which kind of plays through the rest of the episode. And as we know, Charlie does not like Isaac because of what happened with the Kalon. And in my episode 1 review, I said that I wanted to see Ensign Burke more throughout the season, and we have actually gotten quite a bit of her. I do think it's kind of taken away about some of the established characters, but not too much. But this is really why I wanted to see her return and see her more in the season, is because her problems with Isaac I find to be interesting, and I wanted that addressed because it really wasn't fully addressed there in episode 1. So in this episode, we're getting some of that filled out as well, because Charlie still doesn't like Isaac. And Malloy ends up taking the best selfie that I've ever seen, and I don't even like selfies, but how could you see this picture and not smile? I mean, look at that. We get the reintroduction of the Aronoff device, which is the temporal device that we saw at the end of season 2. And apparently it's been upgraded. They've continued work on it. I figured they probably would have shut down the program after what happened. But I guess they had it up and going, and they do kind of address it in the episode by saying you can't stop progress. It's going to move forward. You might as well be the one that's controlling the way in which it moves forward. So they've been messing around with the device, and it's been upgraded and can now theoretically transport the ship through time. And they do bring up the idea of temporal paradox. The example given in the episode is with an egg salad sandwich, and they transport the egg salad sandwich 5 seconds into the past. So 2 sandwiches are together for, a few seconds before Lamar puts the other egg salad sandwich on the device and transport it back in time. And Malloy says, well, why'd you transport the other one? We could have had 2 egg salad sandwiches. Then Lamar and Isaac explain that they had to transport it back in time because that's where that egg salad sandwich came from. So having 2 egg salad sandwiches with Lamar never sending it back in time creates a temporal paradox, because where did that other egg salad sandwich come from if he did not send it back in time? And this is important because it really kind of gives the first inkling of kind of how time travel functions in the Orville universe. I'm big in time travel stuff. I love time travel movies. I love shows that have to do with time travel. A lot of times they don't do it right. I've written a book, my first book that I wrote, not published or anything, by the way. It's just a book that I wrote for fun, was about time travel, and I got really into the different theories on time travel. And so there's all kinds of different ways you could approach it. And they specifically mentioned that a new universe would branch off from this one because of the egg salad sandwich. So if he never sends the egg salad sandwich back, where'd the other one come from? That's the paradox, and that also means that there is a branched off universe because of the sandwich. Again, this is kind of important basic knowledge to understand as we're going through the episode. So the Union's going to send a convoy to escort the Orville and the device to a nearby space station for its own protection, to do some more research and protect it from the Kaylon and the Krill, because now they having to deal with the Krill as their enemy now too. And I would say that I don't know why they don't just bring it back to Earth. I feel like Earth would be the most secure place you could bring it. So that I thought that was kind of strange, but they show up to the space station and then it's just completely destroyed, and the Kaylon are on top of them just immediately. And then a space battle ensues around the debris of the busted up space station, forcing the Orville to retreat. Now, when this happened, I found myself wondering, how did the Kaylon found out? Were they monitoring communications? Is there some kind of mole somewhere? How'd they find out so fast where they were going and about this device? You don't get an explanation in this episode, at least if there was, I missed it, although I'm pretty sure they just didn't explain this episode. So I'm curious as to if that'll play out in the next couple episodes as far as where this intel came from. So Captain Mercer orders Kiali to destroy the device, but she is knocked down as she's about to head down there. So Malloy volunteers to run and destroy it. And I did find it kind of odd that the pilot, one of the best pilots in the fleet, is leaving the bridge in the middle of a fight. I think they could have made a little bit of a better explanation as to why he went, because he is the best pilot on the ship and one of the best pilots in the Union. But regardless, we needed him to go because that really sets up the plot of the episode. So they end up overloading the quantum drive in order to break free of a Kaylon tractor beam. Now, as this goes off, it triggers the Aronoff device, the temporal, time travel device, and it shoots out a big blast, and Malloy can't get a shot off in time and is transported back in time. He disappears. Nobody knows where he went. So Orville gets a hail from Earth that was sent 400 years ago, directed towards the nebula that they found themselves in, and it's from Malloy, who was transported back to Earth 400 years ago, and he had been on Earth for 6 months in the year 2015.
2015?
And it is explained just like Commander Grayson in the Season 2 episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Human subconsciousness plays a part in how temporal jumps and the machine works, which is the reason he was transported back to 2015, because he was thinking about Laura because of the song that was played at the beginning. So searching through the Orville database, they find out that Malloy died at the age of 96. And Grayson points out that he is supposed to hide away and interfere as little as possible if stuck in a temporal situation because of Union temporal law. So why is there a record of his existence being a pilot and, apparently directly, interfacing with society? So the Orville jumps back in time. So the machine does work, and they're able to take the ship back in time to get Malloy, but it comes up just short of the destination, putting them in the year 2025, meaning Malloy's been on Earth for 10 years. And the ship can't jump again because it's out of dysonium reserves, which is also why they fell short of their target destination by 10 years. Isaac says they can extract some dysonium from the Earth's mantle, but Charlie is needed because of her skills with fourth dimensional geometry, which was established there in episode 1. So I'm glad that comes back again as well. Isaac uses an image emitter to look human, and it's really awesome to see Mark Jackson as the character, like outside of the suit. We've seen him portray Isaac before outside of the suit. And he's one of the best actors in the show. I gotta say, he plays Isaac just really well. And I'd love to see him use the emitter, the image inducer, or whatever you want to call it, more on the ship. Maybe Isaac trying to blend in more with the crew. It seems like, it might make the crew feel a little bit more comfortable with seeing him as a human. It seems like it'd be a good plot point. I don't know if they'll explore it here in this season. There's only 4 episodes left, but I do think that would be a good plot to kind of have with Isaac later. So they're down on Earth, and Isaac and Charlie go off to get the dysonium, and Mercer and Grayson go to find Malloy. And Malloy Malloy is visually shocked to see Ed and Kelly walking up, and Malloy wants to take them for a ride. Obviously, he has something that he wants to say. Something is going on. His reaction to seeing them was handled really well, because you're just like, you can tell that he's kind of worried that they're there. But he's also kind of he's happy to see them. But like I said, you could tell something is going on. He wants to take them for a ride and explain some stuff. And then we get a shot of the Orville license plate in the car that he's driving. Apparently he wanted to get the Orville, but that was already taken. So he went with Orville. And he says it sounds like a shitty band, but I just thought it sounded like the beginnings of an Ovaltine commercial.
Ovaltine?
So in the car, Mercer and Grayson lay into Malloy for breaking temporal law by not hiding away. And Grayson even says, if we make it back, you're going to have to answer for this. And I'm just like, he's been down there for 10 years, guys. What sounds good on paper is not always practical. And we know that this is like the first introduction of temporal, time travel in the Union. So for all intents and purposes, Malloy's the first time traveler. It's really the first time any of these laws have been put into practice that, they could track. So, I thought it was kind of crazy they're laying into him so hard. And Malloy says he's not going to go back with them. He's choosing to stay where he is, and he takes Ed and Kelly into his house to meet his pregnant wife and kid, who is Laura Huggins, who was the girl from the cell phone from that season 2 episode. So he's got a whole family, and he's not going to go back. Back with the adventures of Isaac and Charlie, Isaac continues to try and strike up conversations to try and build some kind of relationship with Charlie and alleviate any tensions. And but it's not really working out. And they come across the biker hangout, and they need a ride to get further down the road as opposed to walking the whole way. So Charlie makes a deal to obtain some motorcycles if Isaac beats the biggest guy in the bar at arm wrestling. And it's a really fun scene. I really like all the interactions there in the motorcycle bar. Some really great, funny dialogue from Isaac. Back with Malloy, he and his wife Laura are telling Ed and Kelly how they got together while they're eating lunch. And you can tell that Mercer and Grayson are not thrilled with Gordon because he didn't uphold temporal law. He's really upset while hearing this whole conversation, but you can tell that they're kind of torn on it as well. And Mercer and Grayson have a private conversation with Malloy, and Captain Mercer is pissed, saying he should take Malloy to the ship and throw him in the brig. And Malloy tells him to shut up. That's right. Malloy tells Captain Mercer, shut up. I'm not your lieutenant. I'm not your helmsman. I'm not your crew. I'm Gordon Malloy, and this is my house. And I'm like, yes, thank you. This is Gordon Malloy as a man. Like, his whole character. There has been moments where it hasn't been this, but for the most part, his character has been presented as kind of a man-child. Right. So this is like the first time that I'm really like looking at his character. I'm like, this is a full grown man, and he's standing by his position on this. And I'm just like, this is getting good. Like he's telling him, hey, I'm not part of your crew anymore. It's been 10 years. I'm not a Union officer. I don't want anything to do with this. Leave me alone. I have a family. And he says, I spent 3 years hiding in an abandoned cabin alone. And he killed animals with his phaser for food, which apparently is a big deal in the future. Not allowed to kill animals. It's the same thing as murder, which I thought was kind of interesting. But regardless, he says, hey, I was messed up from the isolation. You know what it's like to be by yourself with no human communication for 3 years hunting animals in the woods? They don't know. They don't know. And so after those 3 years of living that way, he said, to hell with it. They're not coming. I am stuck here, and I'm not going to live my life like this. And I think that's extremely fair. And he says, what was I supposed to do? It was either do this or I was going to die. And Captain Mercer says, to protect the timeline, yes. that he should have died. And I'm like, man, that's a drastic step. To protect the timeline, yes, you should have died. And I actually find it to be somewhat hypocritical coming from Captain Mercer, considering that at the end of season 2, he wanted to start a relationship with a past version of Grayson. When they thought Grayson, there was no way to send her back, and she was stuck there, and they couldn't figure out what to do about it, he decides he wants to start a relationship with past Commander Grayson. And I'm just like, you know, it's easy for you to say, hey, it's temporal law, it's this, it's that. You know, this is a real person, okay? This is a real person who was stuck in the past and had to find a way to live there. And Malloy makes the point that they are here. Okay, that the Orville made it back in time. The Orville found him in their database, which means the future is fine. And Captain Mercer says no one really knows or understands time travel. According to Isaac, it's all still in flux. So even by his own admission, he has no idea what's happening. It could be that Malloy stayed in the past, all that stuff happened, he made it in the database, it didn't affect the future in any significant way, and them trying to drag him back does nothing except for, you know, separate him from his family. So Gordon isn't going to go with him. Like, he's not voluntarily, you know, he's got a family, he's got responsibilities, he's got a life, and he doesn't want to go back to his old life. And, you know, I get where Captain Mercer and Grayson are coming from here. But again, you're going off of, by their own admission, very flimsy data, because they have by his own admission, he said that nobody knows how time travel works. So it could be that the timeline is completely fine. In that future where they pulled up the database and saw what happened to Malloy, that's just part of their past now, and it made no significant difference that you know of, right? So everything that's being talked about here is all hypothetical. So you are taking him away from his family that exists right in front of you, and because of a hypothetical. I mean, that's essentially what the argument is, because on paper, that's what's supposed to happen. And I find that to be, I find it to be interesting. And Laura, Gordon's wife over here, is kind of a little bit of this conversation. Not a whole lot, but Gordon ends up going ahead and telling Laura who he is and where he comes from. And it doesn't change how, you know, they feel about each other at all. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Lamar's working to get the ship fixed, and ends up getting it on with Kiali, which is not isn't too surprising based on the last few episodes. They clearly had at least a physical attraction to each other. So we'll see if it actually turns out to be anything more than that and into like a real relationship. And then back with the adventures of Isaac and Charlie. That's what I keep calling this subplot. The drill spot that they need is in the basement of a house for sale, and a realtor ends up letting them in under the pretense of being a married couple, which is kind of amusing. And after they finish drilling, Isaac tells Charlie, you know, thank you for saving my life, because he never actually said it, and he realized that he never actually said thank you. So he wanted to make sure that she knew that he was thankful. And there's a little conversation obviously going back and forth, but in the end, you know, Charlie still doesn't forgive Isaac because of her friend that she lost. And, you know, a lot of people lost a lot of things, and, you know, this is what I wanted to see addressed, was more Isaac and Charlie and her holding on to that hatred for him, and her kind of moving past it. And so she's still not past it. They've addressed it here. She's still not past it. We don't really find any information, and really the relationship's about the same as it was before. She still doesn't like him, and he's like, I'm trying. I don't really know what to do. So Malloy is watching TV with his family when Mercer, Grayson, and Kiali show up to take Gordon by force. That's why Kiali's there. They're going to drag him out of there, and Gordon offers to go if his family can come with him, if they take his family too. And Captain Mercer's like, no, we're not going to do that. So Malloy pulls out his phaser and says he's going to stun them, and he's going to take his family, he's going to disappear somewhere, and they're never going to find him. So Mercer gets a communication from Isaac that they found what they need. The temporal device should be working now. And I don't know if this was pre-planned, but Mercer says to Malloy, okay, fine. We're going to make the jump, go back 10 years earlier, and get you from there. from when you sent that hail. When you wanted us to be here, we're going to go back in time and we're going to grab you from there. And that effectively erases this, not only this version of Gordon, it erases his family, his pregnant wife and his kid that are standing right in front of them. And Laura rightfully asks, like, what kind of people are you? And Grayson says, we're sorry, but this reality shouldn't exist. And then right after that, Captain Mercer says it's immoral and illegal to play God with history, talking to Malloy. And Malloy rightfully points out that they're the ones playing God. That Captain Mercer is the one playing God. It's illegal. It should be illegal to erase people from existence because I call that murder. And it is. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's the hypocrisy of what he's talking about. Is like, it's immoral and illegal to play God with history. And they chide, Gordon this whole time about the decisions that he made and the situation that he's in. And, they're the ones playing God because right in front of them is a family that exists in front of them. And they're the ones deciding, well, it's not supposed to exist because he was never supposed to be here, but he is there. So you going back in time and pulling him from a different time, you're erasing them from existence, right? Or are you? And that's actually what I'm going to get to here in the end. But based on the episode, this is what we're made to understand, that they're erasing his family. And Malloy is yelling at Ed to not do this, begging them as they're walking away not to do this with his phaser in his hand. He can't bring himself to shoot them. It was one of the most emotional scenes in the series. I think to me, it was the most emotional scene in the series for me personally. And we do get a scene where Gordon goes back inside and faces his family and says, I don't know what's going to happen. This family is bigger than time. And we get a pan over to a picture of the family. So the Orville jumps back in time and grabs Gordon after spending only a month back in time. So he spends a month on past Earth at this point. That's the version of Gordon that they end up grabbing. And, us as the audience were like, okay, well, so his family no longer exists, right? Again, I'll get into that here in a minute. And the Aronoff device, the temporal device they were using, is broken after that jump. But the Orville can travel forward in time by removing the quantum bubble that protects them from time displacement when they're traveling at light speed. So they can travel forward in time. So they travel forward in time 400 years to get back to the time in which they left. I'm surprised they nail that time. Like, I'm surprised they nail arriving then. I figured maybe it'd be a few days or something like that, or maybe a few weeks or months or something like that they were gone for. I thought that would have been an interesting way to end the episode, but they don't do that way. But Ed and Kelly tell Gordon what happened, explain, hey, this is what happened with you 10 years in the future, being stuck on past Earth. And he responds with, I can't believe I would be that selfish to risk the timeline or to threaten you. And I find it odd that he thinks that part is selfish. Honestly, the most selfless thing that I've seen his character do is protect his family in this episode. That is selfless. That's not selfish. This is a completely different person. That this 10 years earlier, Malloy is a completely different person than the person that we saw earlier in the episode. And Grayson says, you were tested to a degree that none of us have ever been. Who's to say that we wouldn't have done the same thing? A family does powerful things to a person. And that's true. I think any one of those characters in that situation would have done the same thing. As far as how long they would have stayed out in the cabin by themselves, that would be to varying degrees. And Malloy says, I know nothing is going to make you guys feel better, but for what it's worth, you did the right thing. As hard as it was, you put your duty first. And I think this was a massive missed opportunity. This is a thing that has been kind of running, even though I love this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes of the series. My problem with this ending, and there's the other episodes of the Orville have also had ending problems. This one included. You should have had him more conflicted about finding out this information. He should have, even though he doesn't have any memory of what happened, knowing that, and there's a version of him out there that was with Laura and had a family and is now erased. And I feel like he should be far more conflicted about this. I feel like he should have a little bit more animosity towards them. The fact that this alternate version of himself really matured and found happiness with a family. And, now we're back to kind of man-child Malloy. I mean, that's kind of who we're getting now. And I think that if you would have taken it in that direction where you had him have some more animosity towards Ed and Kelly, I think that would have been a stronger ending. And I feel like that could have led to something potentially later. So I do think it was a missed opportunity. That's how I would have ended it. So let's talk about time travel, which is something I love to examine. I love to talk about. As I said before, I wrote a book that really had to do with time travel. So I love seeing the different ways and approaches time travel can have. There's tons of stories that cover time travel, some that do it really well and some that don't do it all that well. I think with this specific episode, I think there are some rules laid out, but they leave enough open to interpretation, and I think that the approach that they took to the story really worked. But in regards to time travel, here's what I think. I think that the timeline of Malloy and his family still exist in this universe. And there's two things I would point to for this. In the beginning of the episode, Lamar and Isaac talk about the temporal paradox. We talked about it with the egg sandwich. That's the example that they give, and they transport it 5 seconds in the past. An entirely new universe would have been branched off from this one. That is what is said at the beginning of the episode, meaning that the idea of multiverses running concurrently alongside their own could exist. There's multiple timelines that exist and that are created based on decisions that are made with temporal equipment. So the idea of 2 egg salad sandwiches existing in the same place implies that there could be multiple timelines that are happening all at the same time. And the second thing I'd point to is when the Aronoff device went off, we see more than one version of Malloy being blasted backwards before disappearing through time. So what we could be seeing is a convergence of multiple timelines simultaneously colliding due to the device going off in more than one universe at the same time. So there could be, multiple different versions of the Orville all having some kind of, dealing with the Kalon. The device goes off, and what we're seeing is multiple different versions of Malloy in that instance. Or it could be that one single version of Malloy is being split off into multiple versions of himself and sent at different points in time. So it is feasible that there's multiple versions of Malloy that are thrown through different timelines. So the version that they went back and got could be a completely different Malloy. There's no way to know, but either way, it could be that timeline of Malloy and his family could still exist out there. We don't see it getting destroyed. We see the conversation having. The whole episode revolves around the fact that this family could be destroyed, and it's put out there that nobody really knows how time travel works. They mention it in the episode. The Union has no idea how time travel works. And neither do we as the audience. We just can glean some specific clues and some things and kind of decide what we think about it. But the fact that no one knows how time travel works ultimately makes Malloy right, in my opinion. His family existed right there in front of their eyes, but Captain Mercer chose to erase them because of hypothetical timeline damage. And that is really the debate of this episode. That's the crux of this episode. And it works really, really well. And I see both sides of it. But at the end of the day, Malloy is correct. He has a family that exists right in front of their eyes. And they are erasing them based on hypothetical damage to the timeline that they don't even know if there is any at all. I do think the B plot with the adventures of Isaac and Charlie was enjoyable. That moment with the motorcycle bar, that was great. There's some really great lines of dialogue from Isaac. Getting to see Mark Jackson actually show his face as that character is really great. And like I said, I hope they use that some more. And I feel like this was the kind of side plot that really, they should have had this type of side plot in the last episode. I know a lot of people like the last episode, episode 5, A Tale of Two Topas. I don't think it's a bad episode, but I think that it really needed a subplot like this. It needed a side plot, something else to do with the characters, and I feel like that would have benefited that episode greatly. This side plot works really well. as a completely separate, side story that's happening with these characters. Honestly, I just really love this episode. I have very little criticisms here, which is very rare. I always have some criticisms of episodes, even if I really like them. There's always specific things that I think maybe would have worked better if they were tweaked, or things that I don't think necessarily worked that well. I think the only criticism I had was their explanation for why Malloy left, piloting the ship. I mean, he is the best pilot. I feel like they could have worked around with that a little bit more. I think the ending wasn't as strong as it could have been, I sound like a broken record. I've said that with several reviews so far, is that I do think the endings of a lot of these episodes they're not as strong as they could be. And I think that's the case here. I feel like Malloy should have had more animosity and should not have been so quick to kind of crap on the alternate version of himself that ended up having a family. I do think that would have done a lot to really evolve this character forward, outside of like being kind of the man child, that they kind of use him for just kind of humor and getting beat up. And, and he's a great actor. Scott Grimes is a great actor. And we saw that on display here when he's given the right material. And I feel like they should have made him be more shocked about this, have more conflicting emotions about this, and harbor some animosity towards Ed and Kelly. I think that would have been a much better ending, and I feel like that would have evolved the character going forward. But regardless, his performance is great. And I just really love this episode. I mean, I think this really is my favorite episode of the series. But what do you guys think? Do you think Malloy and his family still exist somewhere out there in a different timeline? There seems to be enough information in the episode to suggest that could be the case. We don't really know. Do you think we'll get an answer to that? Or will they just leave it up for the audience to decide? I'm definitely curious as to what you guys think. What do you guys think about the time travel aspects, and who is right in this debate on the temporal law and what works well on paper versus the practicality of what happened? I think it's very interesting. I think that this episode makes for very interesting discussions with some great emotional scenes. It's just really solid. But comment, let me know what you guys think below. Is this also one of your favorite episodes? Like I said, it is mine. But I want to thank all of my subscribers. You guys are awesome. And thank you to everyone else who checked out this video. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geek364, and I always tell you the truth.